Simon Cowell has seen it all, but nothing could have prepared him for this. When news broke about Courtney Hadwin, one of the most unforgettable voices from America's Got Talent, Cowell's reaction left everyone stunned. Witnesses say he was visibly shaken, even breaking down in tears. But what could have happened to leave one of the toughest figures in the music industry so emotional? And why is there a mysterious silence from those closest to Courtney? Today, we uncover the heartbreaking truth about Courtney Hadwin, the struggles, the setbacks, and the shocking incident that changed everything. Stay with us, because this story is one you won't forget. Courtney wasn't the kind of child who commanded attention. In fact, she was painfully shy, so much so that even speaking in class felt overwhelming. But hand her a microphone, everything changed. Her parents noticed it early on. At home, she would sing along to songs with a voice so raw, so packed with emotion, that it was almost unbelievable for a child her age. But it wasn't until she turned 10 that she finally stepped onto a stage. It was just a small school talent show, a handful of parents, plastic chairs, nothing big. But the second she started singing, the atmosphere shifted. She wasn't just another nervous kid mumbling lyrics. She was electric. Parents leaned forward. Teachers exchanged stunned glances. Something about her was different. That moment changed everything. With encouragement from her parents and teachers, Courtney threw herself into competitions. She trained at local music schools, perfecting her voice and stage presence. But it was never about sounding polished. It was about raw, unfiltered emotion, and she had that in spades. Courtney wasn't drawn to the bubblegum pop stars most kids her age adored. Not even close. Instead, she gravitated toward the legends: Janis Joplin, Etta James, James Brown. She didn't just listen to their music, she studied them, their voices, their raw energy, the way they commanded the stage. It mesmerized her. For Courtney, it was never about hitting perfect notes. It was about feeling every beat in her soul, and making sure the audience felt it too. That was something she understood instinctively. By 12, Courtney had built a serious reputation in the local music scene. She performed anywhere she could: small festivals, open mic nights, tiny venues, and every time she took the stage, something wild happened. The shy, awkward girl from Hartlepool would disappear, and in her place, a powerhouse of energy and emotion. Off stage, she was reserved, but under the spotlight, she was unstoppable. Then came The Voice Kids UK. In 2017, she stepped onto the stage, nerves bubbling just beneath the surface, but she was ready. The judges watched as this timid girl stood before them, waiting for the music to start. And then, boom, she exploded into a gritty, electrifying performance of Tina Turner's Nutbush City Limits. Judges' eyebrows shot up. The crowd erupted. It was happening again. The same magic that stunned her teachers years before. Except now it was on national television. Danny Jones, the judge who snatched her up for his team, knew she was something special immediately. She made it far in the competition, leaving audiences in awe with her ability to channel old-school rock legends. But the Voice Kids? That was just the beginning. It was proof that she had something extraordinary. The world just hadn't realized it yet. But that was all about to change. In the music industry, talent alone isn't always enough. Sometimes, an artist's career is shaped by forces far beyond their control. And for Courtney Hadwin, the pressure was immediate. Fans were demanding an album. The industry wanted proof. Was she more than just a reality show sensation? But instead of rushing into original music, her first official release in 2019 was The Cover Sessions, a collection of classic songs that allowed her to showcase her voice in a more controlled studio setting. It was a solid introduction, but it left one major question hanging in the air. Could she create original music with the same magic as her jaw-dropping AGT performances? For Courtney, the transition from competition show finalist to full-fledged recording artist was far from easy. On stage, she was a force of nature, raw, unpredictable, unstoppable. But the recording process, that was an entirely different world. It demanded precision, heavy production, and the ability to adapt to an industry that loves molding young artists into something safer, something more mainstream. Finding the right balance between staying true to her gritty, soul-filled style and meeting the demands of a commercial music label was a challenge. The industry wanted something polished. Courtney wanted something real. And just when it seemed like her career was finally picking up speed, something happened that no one saw coming. By early 2020, everything was in motion. Studio sessions were happening, plans for a major project were taking shape, and discussions about live performances were underway. It felt like her big moment was just around the corner. But then, the world stopped. The pandemic changed everything. Tours were canceled. Album plans were frozen. The entire music industry came to a grinding halt. and for an artist still fighting to build momentum, it was a crushing setback. Amid all the uncertainty, Courtney parted ways with her record label. The details? A complete mystery. But by 2021, one thing was crystal clear. She was going independent. For some artists, losing a major label deal is the beginning of the end. But for Courtney, it was the start of something new. Instead of rushing to release an album under industry pressure, she took her time. She wrote, she experimented, she discovered what she truly wanted her music to sound like. By 2023, Courtney Hadwin was back, but this time on her own term. She released a string of original singles, including Breakable, That Girl Don't Live Here, and Monsters, the last of which climbed to number 19 on Billboard's Hard Rock Digital Song Sales chart. This wasn't just the teenage sensation from AGT anymore. This was a true artist, carving out her own space in the industry. Her sound had evolved, a bold mix of rock, blues, and soul. It felt authentic, real, and her fans? They never left. The same people who had been mesmerized by her viral audition were still there, cheering her on as she built something entirely her own. By 2024, Courtney was stepping into a whole new level of success. That year, she took the stage at the New York Pop's 41st birthday gala, an event honoring Clive Davis. It was a major moment, proving she was gaining recognition far beyond the world of AGT. Later that year, she recorded live versions of her songs at Metropolis Studios, capturing the raw, unfiltered energy that had always made her different from the rest. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. Years of struggle, reinvention, and patience were paying off. But just when it seemed like her path was finally clear, life threw yet another unexpected twist her way. Because while Courtney had battled industry setbacks before, this was something different. This time, it wasn't about record labels or career struggles. This time, it was personal. And as the news spread, one thing became chillingly clear. This wasn't just another obstacle. This was something far worse. With Courtney Hadwin's rise to fame came the inevitable comparisons. Every interview, every article seemed to circle back to the same name: Janis Joplin, Tina Turner, Amy Winehouse. She admired them all, but she wasn't trying to be them. She was trying to be herself. But the pressure wasn't just from the outside. Internally, there was a heavy weight that came with being that girl. The one who had once sent an entire AGT audience into a frenzy within seconds. Could she ever live up to that moment again? Could she recapture that raw, lightning-in-a-bottle magic? She had spent years proving she was more than just a reality show contestant, but sometimes it felt like no matter what she did, people only wanted to talk about what she had already done, not what she was doing now. Music had always been her escape, her lifeline. But even that wasn't easy. Writing original songs was nothing like performing covers on AGT. Back then, she had taken songs people already knew and transformed them into something uniquely hers. But now, every lyric, every melody had to come from her own soul. It was liberating, but it was also terrifying. She wasn't just interpreting someone else's emotions anymore. She was bearing her own. Despite everything, Courtney kept pushing forward. Her New York Pops performance in 2024 had been a game changer, a moment that reminded the world she wasn't just a former AGT contestant. She was an artist with a voice, a vision, and something to say. Her raw, unfiltered recordings at Metropolis Studios only reinforced that. She was no longer chasing the path people expected her to take. She was finally carving out her own. But fame has a way of creeping into every part of life, whether you want it to or not. Social media, interviews, endless speculation. It never stopped. Eyes were always on her. There was always someone waiting for the next big headline. For every devoted fan cheering her on, there was a critic questioning whether she still had it, whether she could still shock an audience the way she did all those years ago. That's the brutal reality of living in the public eye. It's not just about what you do. It's about what people think you're doing. In the quiet moments, away from the cameras, the crowds, and the noise, she must have wondered what it all really meant. Would people remember her for the music she was creating now? Or would she always be trapped in the shadow of her AGT past? And more importantly, did she even want the kind of fame that followed her every move? One thing had always been clear. Courtney never did this for the attention. It was never about the headlines or the hype. It was about the music, about stepping onto a stage and becoming something bigger than herself. That feeling, that electricity, was what truly mattered. No matter how the industry tried to shape her, no matter what the world expected from her, she refused to lose sight of that. Because in the end, it was never about being the next Janis Joplin or the next viral sensation. It was about being Courtney Hadwin, and no one else could be her. Simon Cowell knew the traditional music industry wasn't built for artists like Courtney Hadwin. He had seen it happen before, raw, untamed talent being reshaped, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And he had witnessed what happened when artists like Courtney weren't given the space to truly find themselves. He didn't want that for her, but at the same time, there was only so much he could do. When Courtney eventually parted ways with Psycho Music, it wasn't personal, it was business. She needed freedom, and the industry, his industry, wasn't built for freedom. There were no hard feelings, at least not publicly, but that didn't mean Simon had stopped watching. If anything, he had been paying even closer attention. Simon had a habit of keeping tabs on the artists he truly believed in. He had done it with Leona Lewis, Susan Boyle, and others, contestants who had something special but didn't quite fit the industry mold. And Courtney, she had always been on his radar. In interviews, whenever her name came up, there was a certain tone in his voice, something different, a deep respect. He talked about her uniqueness, how unforgettable that first performance was, how even years later, it still stuck with him. Because Courtney wasn't just another contestant. She was one of those artists, the kind that don't come around often, the kind that make people remember why music matters. And Courtney, for all her fierce independence, seemed to share that same deep respect for Simon. She never spoke badly about her time on AGT. She never made it sound like she regretted the way things had unfolded. If anything, she had always been grateful. Grateful for the platform, the exposure, and the once-in-a-lifetime chance to do what she loved on the biggest stage in the world. There was an unspoken bond between them. Simon Cowell had built his entire career on making stars. But some stars can't be made. Some stars just are. Late in the evening, whispers began to spread. Rumors that something had happened to Courtney Hadwin. Within minutes, social media erupted, speculation running wild. The first reports were vague, mentioning a sudden hospitalization, but with no official confirmation. Then, the story exploded. Online accounts began claiming they had inside information. Some pointed to exhaustion. Others hinted at something far more serious. But then, a new detail surfaced. One that changed everything. A car accident. The accident was serious, bad enough that it required immediate medical attention. But with so few details available, panic spread like wildfire. Her fans were in shock. Questions flooded online forums, social media, and comment sections. Where had it happened? How severe was it? Was she even conscious? But the most unsettling part of it all? The silence. No statement from her family. No reassurance from her representatives. No word from any close friend. Those who usually handled her public appearances, her social media, her entire image, remained completely silent. As speculation skyrocketed, they refused to confirm or deny anything. And it wasn't just fans who were shaken. Sources close to America's Got Talent claimed that when Simon Cowell heard the news, his reaction was immediate. He was visibly distressed. Something had happened to Courtney Hadwin, and it was bad. Simon Cowell had seen it all. Countless careers rising and falling, young hopefuls stepping into the spotlight, some making it, others disappearing into obscurity. But this was different. Courtney Hadwin wasn't just another contestant. She was one of the most unforgettable artists to ever grace the AGT stage. A once-in-a-generation talent. He had believed in her. At this point, no one could say for sure what had really happened. And until someone spoke up, the severity of the situation remained a terrifying mystery. As the hours dragged on, the questions kept piling up. But real answers? Nowhere to be found. Was she stable? Were her injuries life-threatening? Would she ever step on stage and perform again? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, why, despite the public panic, had no one spoken up to clear the air? For now, there was nothing anyone could do, except wait.